Oh, good afternoon and a very, very warm welcome back to Silverstone for the second race of the day from the Radical SR1 Cup, and indeed the second race of the season. We had an absolutely titanic scrap in the first race of the day, which was claimed by Chris Rees, and he lines up in second place behind Rob Watkins on the front row. Then row 2, it's Lewis G and Dave Morgan. Row 3, Mark Richards and Peter Tyler from Mark Tishaw and Sam Moores, Tony Barwell and Richard Wilson, then Will Benton and Rob Elise in 12th place, and then Paul Pearce, Andy Chittenden and Richard Mayle complete the field as the cars set off on their sighting lap of the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. It's a 20-minute race to look forward to once more, and it is myself, Ben Evans and Will Brown from Radical Sports Cars to talk you through it. And well, Will, for those who didn't join us for the first race earlier on today, it was about as exciting as motorsport can get. Mark
Rees, and then of course Mark Richards fought his way back through from a difficult position on the grid, and I managed to steal it from Chris Rees right at the end.
Yeah, so that will be they will be the main protagonists to watch for as the race unfolds. Rob Watkins, though, who starts from pole position, was very much at the sharp end throughout the course of the earlier race, but slightly different grid in that it was set by the driver's second fastest lap from qualifying. So our pulses for race 1, Dave Morgan lines up in 4th place. Lewis G, who was our top Fangio class runner in race 1, well, he starts in an excellent 3rd position. Mark Richards, number 52, is certainly going to be worth watching for as he improves up the order. Also Peter Tyler, car 80, who was in the top 3 on the first lap until he spun it all the way coming out of the loop, and thereafter it all got a little bit more difficult. So the track conditions nicely rubbered in since the race earlier on. It's still been pretty chilly and blustery, but we have had some big GT cars out on track. We've had qualifying for tomorrow's Radical Enduro racing, and therefore there should be a little bit more grip than maybe the drivers found earlier on. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Radical SR1 Cup, this is the entry-level route into the Radical Motorsport ladder, and for the fixed fee of £37,500 plus VAT, you get for your first year of racing the car and all the works. So basically everything that you require to become a racing driver is done for you for the fixed fee for Radical, and then you've got this SR1 Cup car which you can campaign for a second season in the SR1 Cup, and then thereafter the Radical Motorsport world, and indeed probably the world itself, Will, is your oyster, because I think they're one and the same.
It really is, because you've got a fantastic stepping stone, and everything that you learn within the SR1 Cup, the good skills in terms of racecraft, qualifying, pace, driving line, and also the car maintenance and aero setup, it's all included in the package. So these drivers have got a really good toolbox of skills to go into whatever discipline. Obviously, hopefully further up the Radical ladder through the Radical Sprint Championship, which isn't here this weekend, but then obviously the Radical Enduro Championship, which is, and then ultimately European Masters, or even beyond with GT racing in GT Open or similar.
Exactly, and I mean we've seen with Chris Hoy, who raced in this championship 2 years ago, he is racing at Le Mans next weekend. So you can propel yourself up the motorsport ladder very, very quickly, because these Radical SR1 Cup cars, they teach you what you need to know about sports car racing. You've got the aerodynamic downforce, you've got the prototype body shape. It really is it's the perfect way to go racing, and they are very rapid as well.
Don't be deceived at all. No, it's a 1340cc engine, and that's 185 horsepower behind your shoulders, and driving through a 6-speed sequential gearbox. So it's all very sort of high technology stuff, and is really a perfect package for a modern entry-level racing car.
So we have got Richard Mayle coming into position at the back of the field, and then we should get the 5-second board shown to the drivers. So we look to the gantry. I'm just wondering if there's a hole on the grid or something. I'm not seeing a marshal at the back with the green flag, and waiting for the 5-second board to be shown to the competitors, which I think it has been now. Indeed it has. So it's now time to look to the gantry as the red lights are about to come on. Long hold, away we go for the second time today in the Radical SR1 Cup. Who's got the jump? Is it Watkins or Rees? We've got one or two of them stalled a little bit further back, as it is turning through Copse Corner. I think maybe somebody's run a little bit wide. Indeed they have. So it is Rob Watkins who leads the way from Chris Rees, and then it was Dave Morgan who slithered out very, very wide. He, though, would appear to have got the jump on Lewis G, and then it's Peter Tyler in 5th.
Yeah, it looks like everybody made it away there. Paul Pierce just struggling a little bit off the line and dropped back through the field. But yeah, absolutely, it's Rob Watkins, who we saw in the earlier race this morning, was really challenging at the front there and couldn't quite find a move. But he ultimately had the pace. He certainly was one of the fastest drivers out there.
Yeah, he was maybe just a little bit more tentative than some of the others in terms of making some of those passing manoeuvres. And so we've got that leading quintet breaking clear. We've got others behind looking to make very good progress. Mark Richards, the 52 car, in the thick of that, trying to scythe through. He turns in just behind Tony Barwell. He moves ahead of Richard Wilson, as here is Rob Watkins leading the way from Chris Rees. Then it's Dave Morgan. That's the black and orange headlamp covers. Then the gold headlamp covers of Lewis G. The fluorescent car of Peter Tyler, which is a little bit easier to pick out. And there is indeed Richard Wilson, not, I should say, of I don't believe it fame.
Yeah, and this time Lewis G's got his mirrors full of Peter Tyler there, who's obviously trying to make amends for the spin that he had in race 1 this morning. And again, he was one of the really quick guys out there, of course, in his second season of SR1 Cup racing. So expect to see him challenging at the front.
Mark Tishaw running in 6th. He was involved in a first lap spin at the start of race 1 that did a little bit of damage to his car as well and hurt his progress. But the autocar journalist who will be chronicling his efforts this season, well, quite frankly, he needs to put in a good performance, because otherwise we'll let us know exactly how he's done.
He's given himself plenty of material for the next couple of articles, that's for sure.
Yeah, as he'll probably sell merit. The first 5 actually didn't count. That's not true, because Rob Watkins is breaking with Chris Rees away from Dave Morgan. And we saw this in race 1, didn't we, Will? That Dave was very quick over a single lap, but he was struggling for the consistency throughout the race and eventually faded down the order. Yeah,
and he admitted after the first race that he possibly pushed his tyres a little bit too hard in the early stages of the race. And yeah, that ultimately cost him as the race went on. But now, having survived that first lap scare there just a second ago at Copse, and oh, we've just seen a change for position there. That looks like, is that Sam Moores?
It's Mark Richards.
Mark Richards just making his way past Mark Tishaw.
So Mark Richards, he's got a little bit of a mountain to climb in. 7th, well, he's now 6th, but he's 6.3 seconds already back from the race leading group of cars, although that fight for 3rd is nice and congested with Dave Morgan in 3rd. He's got Lewis G just behind him, and Lewis's Fangio Cup rival Peter Tyler is just in pursuit beyond that. The Fangio Cup, I should add, is for the drivers of a certain vintage. Second flush of youth, I like to call it, or I think the regulations say it's the over 50s. But they have got themselves well up the order as well, and potentially could fight for a podium, as it's the 2 Slim Racing teammates, Rob Watkins and Chris Rees, who are leading the way at the front of the field. And I just wonder, Will, whether there was possibly a little bit of a briefing from Slim Borgert, having watched that first race, saying if you work together you can gap the rest of the field, then sort out the victory.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, they've obviously realised that they've got the pace to break away, and ultimately they've got a good chance of protecting each other from Dave Morgan as well, who's ultimately going to be the biggest threat here. Except
Dave Morgan's just had a fantastic lap. He's broken clear of Lewis G and Peter Tyler, and
just goes to show how quickly the tables can turn in SR1 Cup.
I think it's one of the really nice characteristics of these cars is that gaps are closed downable, particularly on a day like today, which is a bit blustery with some headwinds around parts of the circuit.
Being an entry-level car, the car relies a little bit more on aerodynamic grip, mechanical grip than outright aero. Certainly not. The balance is slightly different from the other models in the range, so you do find that you're not having to rely as much to tow on the other cars in order to make progress.
So down the Wellington Straight, we're on lap 2 of the race. We've got 9 in during the first race, and probably we don't see the intervention of a safety car, we should be looking at a similar tally this time around. Now, what progress, we wonder, of Mark Richards. There he is as he comes out of Brooklands, and this has been a good lap for Richards. He is on course for the fastest lap of the race, and he was 2 seconds quicker. He was a whole second quicker than Peter Tyler just through the middle sector, and pulled out 2 seconds over Mark Tishaw as well through that sector. So across the line for Mark Richards, 2 minutes 19.5. It's a second quicker than anybody else in the race is circulating at the moment, and therefore Richards is now 5.4 seconds back from the lead of the race. He maintains that level of capture, then he could still be in contention, if not for the victory, then certainly the podium.
Yeah, and he was very disappointed by his form in that final corner of race one. Really thought he let the race get away with him and shouldn't have left the door open for Chris Rees to steal it. So he'll be looking to make amends.
So we head on to the hangar straight. Now, are we going to see a change here in the Fangio class? Because Lewis G has got Peter Tyler tucked right behind him. There is Lewis in the car with the gold elements to the nose coat. Turns through Stowe corner. And where's Peter Tyler? He's just sitting in his wheel tracks, letting Lewis do some of the hard work, because, I should explain, the most experienced drivers in this race, this is only their second season of car racing, and therefore some of the tricks of the trade in terms of racecraft and experience are still in the development process. And certainly one of those is that actually, as you're starting out, it's much easier to follow the car in front than it is to set the pace.
The entry level effectively for SR1 Cup is drivers who have no experience at all in racing or have completed less than 6 races in any other discipline. So yeah, they're all novice racers when they first come into SR1 Cup. And oh, it's another spin for Peter.
Well,
that's a very, very quick and impressive recovery if we can get it back going in a straight line again.
Come on, Peter, let's find a gear. If he can get underway, then I think the James Bond film producers will be on the phone after that J-turn recovery. But I rather fear he's lost the engine, unfortunately, and that's a real pity because he was showing so strongly. So that serves to promote Mark Richards up into 5th position, and it means that the leading quintet, I would suggest, to separate by about 3.5–4 seconds. We'll find out fairly shortly as they turn their way through Brooklands. Here's another look at it. Yeah, the grip just suddenly lets go.
Backwards for a very long way there, but yeah, did a great job to get it facing back in the right direction. But sadly, it looks like he's not going to be able to rejoin the race.
Well, it could just be a case that it's easily done sometimes when you have a big spin like that, particularly if you've got slightly less experience, that you almost forget the fundamentals of getting a car started. So maybe when he just takes a couple of deep breaths, he should be able to get himself underway. We certainly hope that will be the case, but he's not on the move at present, unfortunately. So we have still got leading the way Rob Watkins. In 2nd place, it's Chris Rees. 3rd is Dave Morgan. In 4th is Lewis G. Almost about to become 5th, as flicking it sideways through Beckett's was Mark Richards. Lewis G sees him coming, looks across. By that point, Mark, you can see he's hunched in the cockpit, head down, charging down the hangar straight as he arrives into Stowe corner. He makes the move stick, and that was a nicely judged passing manoeuvre from Mark Richards, as he is now off in pursuit of Dave Morgan. Yeah,
did a very good job there to hold it through the exit onto the hangar straight, and obviously gave himself the right track position to make it stick through Stowe. So that was good driving.
Lewis G, though, still Fangio class leader now from Tony Barwell and Andy Chittenden. As the leading group of cars, it was 3.2 seconds that covered them at the end of lap 3. It would appear that it's going to be a little bit less than that, certainly for the top 4 at the conclusion of this one, as Dave Morgan gets a little bit squirrely coming through farm, and that opens the door to Mark Richards, who glides through on the brakes into Village. And this is really impressive stuff from Mark Richards, who, I think we were saying earlier on, this is his first ever weekend of car racing, and he has jumped straight to the front of the field. I think what's so impressive for me, Will, isn't the outright pace, it's the racecraft that's coming with it.
Yeah, as we just see, I think that was Mark Tishel there just skipping across the gravel. But yeah, as we watch the replay again, he's just got the braking spot on there, hasn't he, to get it turned on the nose and ultimately leave Morgan hanging out to dry.
Meanwhile, we return to the front of the field, and it's a change because Chris Rees has found a way past Rob Watkins. So Rees leading the way, Watkins in pursuit, and then we're almost getting a replay of race 1 because they are about to be joined by Mark Richards. I think the only question mark here for me, Will, is going to be how much Richards has used his tyres, as having, I was about to say little moment, it turned into a pretty big one. That was Rob Elise.
Yeah, that's right. A lucky escape there for Rob Ellis, as he nearly collected the car behind him with Richard Wilson. So, yeah, lucky escape there.
Meanwhile, Rees, Watkins and Richards almost as one into Beckett's, and Rob Watkins runs a little bit wide. It gives the opening to Mark Richards, who thinks about doing a Lewis Hamilton from GP2 back in 2006 through Beckett's. He can't quite do it, as he then looks to get the power down coming out of the Chapel Curve, and we've still got half the race remaining here, so they've got plenty of time to get this resolved. It's the 2 Slim Racing cars out front.
Quicker than ever as well, they look to go 3 wide. And once again, yes, Watkins and Richards has made it through as well, so that's all change at the front.
Shows the slipstream effect, doesn't it? And now we have got the 360 racing car sandwich between the 2 Slim Racing entries. Whether or not that's an SOS, I don't know. But as they come through Club Corner, then this is pretty much as we had in race 1. Here is, oh, it's Rob Ellis again. And this time he manages to do the, well, not quite a full 360. But it's almost a rite of passage, I think, for any driver at the start of their career to have a big spin in Cops. I attempted to take a Formula 4 through there flat out a couple of years ago, and it really didn't work. And that almost works out for Rob Watkins.
Very skittery under brakes and didn't quite make it stick.
Yeah,
and that's Mark Richards, yeah. Mark Richards out of contention. What a real shame there.
Well, would you put him out of contention just yet? Because if he can get that car fired up and back and running, it's another look at it, barreling in on the brakes. And I think he got caught out there by the fact that Rob Watkins moved across the cover of the line, as Watkins was perfectly entitled to do, but was probably arriving at the corner at a little bit of a lower velocity than Mark Richards. And although Richards spun there, all credit to him actually for avoiding an incident, because it would have been very easy to skittle into Rob Watkins there and ruin both of their races.
Yeah, you just saw the track's just a teeny little bit bumpy there, and it maybe just caught him under braking, locked the front wheel, and yeah, it was all over very, very quickly.
Well, the exit of Farm, which is where that's been happened, is one of those places where your inner Brian Cox, amateur physicist, has to come to the fore, because you've got so many different load transfers going on in the car through that very quick change of direction and then on the brakes. And for me, what that was for Rob Watkins was he started getting on the brakes for Village before the car had dealt with the exit of Farm.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we are back at the front, and Rob Watkins is leading. He's got a 9/10 of a second advantage over Chris Reese, with Morgan obviously now back up to third position.
So it's as we were for the Slim Racing cars, in that they are flying in formation. It's Watkins ahead of Reese. We have got 7.5 minutes remaining. We're on lap 6 of the race. So the order is Rob Watkins from Chris Reese. Then it's Dave Morgan. 4th place is our Fangio class leader, Lewis G. 5th is Mark Tishaw. 6th is Mark Richards post-rotation. 7th place is Richard Wilson. 8th is Tony Barwell. 9th, Andy Chittenden. Rob Ellis is in 10th, ahead of Sam Moores and Richard Mayle. Lovely shot there into Rob Watkins' eyes, fully focused on the road ahead of him. And he is running very consistently in terms of pace. Here is a replay of an overtaking manoeuvre a little bit lower down the order. That is Richard Wilson on Tony Barwell. So Wilson gains the place. That was for 7th position. These cars look like such fun to drive as well, because with that slight reliance on mechanical grip, they can just slide them that little bit more and take a few more liberties on the brakes, flinging them into some of the turns. Yeah,
absolutely. And you can, you know, at this stage as well, it's a really good indication. You see the different lines that they're taking. There's lots of flexibility in where they can put the car. Again, because you're not entirely dependent on the aero, there isn't one set line around the circuit. So there's really, you know, there's lots and lots of opportunities to overtake and outbrake around here.
And the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit is such a huge track as well that it's nice and wide. Picking the right racing line can actually be a little bit of a challenge, and at the moment we're seeing clearly the direction in terms of setup and coaching working perfectly for Rob Watkins and Chris Reese. The pair of them separated by about 3/4 of a second. Then it's 2 seconds back to Dave Morgan in 3rd, and Morgan has shaken off the attention of Lewis G in 4th. In 5th, I suspect it's going to be Mark Richards across the line, but he's now 15.7 seconds off the lead, and despite his heroics so far this weekend, I don't see that being closed down in the next 2.5 laps.
No, I think it's going to be a tough ask, but no, he's done very well to recover, and obviously get another set of points on, you know, in the bag for this weekend before the whole grid moves on to Alton Park, which is going to prove a very, very different challenge to here, of course.
It really is, because one of the nice things about the SR1 Cup calendar is it is a very fine selection of circuits on which they compete, but also very distinct and different circuits. In that here at Silverstone, you've got a lot of high-speed turns and acres of runoff. Alton Park winding its way through the Cheshire countryside, more mid-speed corners, but you're very aware of the proximity of the barriers, and it requires a slightly different driving discipline.
Yeah, and then of course we go on to Snetterton again, a classic airfield circuit with a really interesting technical infield section of the course that of course was only built just a few years ago. And then we finished the year at Brands Hatch GP, which is a circuit that's loved by drivers, big challenge, big gradients, and it takes a lot of commitment to get a good lap time there.
So our race leader Rob Watkins, towards the end of the 7th lap of the race, will be going into the penultimate lap at the conclusion of this one, and Chris Rees, just wonder whether or not, Will, he's planning a not dissimilar race to what he conducts at the end of race 1, which is snatching the lead on the very last lap and just not making the moves at the moment on Rob Watkins, just looking at Watkins, where's he weaker, where am I stronger, where could I really take him by surprise?
You could see at this stage in race 1 that he was just biding his time, looking at this very point here, the entry into Brooklands, and judging where he was able to get the run on Richards, and yeah, he could very well be doing the same thing for this race, and indeed he does look like he's just starting to wind up and close up again, ready for that move later, maybe possibly the end of this lap.
Yeah, he's appreciably closer towards the tail end of the lap than he was in the middle of the lap. As across the line they come. That concludes 7 laps, and the gap down, in fact, by 0.2 of a second over the course of the lap, with Dave Morgan in 3rd, the fastest of all of them. And that's the first time in the race that they've dipped beneath the 2-minute 20-second barrier. As the drivers get into the rhythm, they've got the cars and tyres working absolutely as they should do. So through Beckett's now. Just a little bit of a squeal on the tyres, but a much more crisp line from Chris Rees. He's not moving around the road as much as Rob Watkins.
No, we saw this morning that he was generally fastest in the second sector of the lap, but struggled a little bit in the opening section. So he's improved through the day, and that's looking a lot better now. And yeah, his lines are a lot smoother. And so this, of course, although it's his second year of the SR1 Cup, it's the first time that the calendar's been to Brands Hatch GP. So it's a new challenge for him as much as any of the other drivers.
It certainly is, as they head on to the braking zone for Vale. Rob Watkins still clear of Chris Rees, and then it is getting the power down, accelerating out of club. The next challenge is Abbey, and the gap closes down further still. So is Rees going to go for the move on the penultimate lap, or just, now that he's closed the gap down to Rob Watkins, just wait until the last lap? Because if he's close enough, there's this overtaking opportunity into Village, then you've got Brooklands, and so Rees doesn't have to make his move if he doesn't want to.
No, absolutely, and I think, yeah, he'll... a little bit of a slide there, though. That will have cost him just a couple of tenths.
Certainly will do. So...
yeah, and in fact, we've just seen the gap's grown again by another tenth, so yeah, that certainly would have helped.
Down the Wellington Straight into Brooklands, Rob Watkins just moves across to the middle of the road, just in case Chris Rees fancy doing anything particularly brave. But Watkins, I suspect, has just driven through the perfect life of those tyres, because the car moving around a little bit more than that of Chris Rees. But again, at the same time, Rees has the luxury of following the car in front. So across the line they come. The gap between the pair of them is pretty much exactly as it was. It's come down by 0.02 of a second as we go into the final lap of the second race of the Razkul SR1 Cup season. Thank you very much for joining us for our coverage from Silverstone today. Now, are we going to see a double victory for Chris Rees? Are we going to see the win for Rob Watkins, or are we going to see something entirely different altogether? Because Dave Morgan is still very much there or thereabouts, so these two trip over themselves on this final lap.
Yeah, again, just another teeny little bit of oversteer there by Rob Watkins, and once again it's allowed Chris Rees to get alongside, but not sure if he's quite got the drive, not quite, as he looks to the outside as well. Maybe there's an opportunity there.
So down the hanger straight we come into Stowe Corner. Both cars just squirming on the brakes as we follow them through Stowe. Then it's downhill, and then just that slight incline defence from Rob Watkins. Rees looks to the outside, through they turn, nose to tail, and then onward around through Club. Just the next acceleration towards Abbey. So we've got two principal overtaking opportunities to go Is Rees going to choose either of them? The first, no, he's not. He makes the mistake going through Abbey. The front of the car washes out, and Chris Rees loses ground. It's only cost him a tenth of a second or two, but that could be absolutely critical.
He might be really lucky. They're just going to catch some back markers on this final lap, which possibly, no, I think that gap's going to be too big. So really, he's just got one last manoeuvre, and I think he's going to be too far away.
He overcommitted going into the loop, and therefore was very slow through the apex and didn't carry the momentum onto the Wellington straight. So it would appear as if Rob Watkins is well set for victory. Watkins, though, takes no chances, moves across nice and early to the racing line in Brooklands as he heads through Luffield for the final time. This has been a really nice drive from Watkins because he's controlled it from the front. He has absorbed everything else that his rivals could throw at him, but it's going to be victory in the second race of the Radical SR1 Cup season for Rob Watkins, with second place going the way of Chris Rees and Dave Morgan completing the podium with Lewis G in fourth and a Fangio winner. So another excellent race from the Radical SR1 Cup here at Silverstone this weekend as Rob Ellis heads down the Wellington Straight en route to what should be 10th position for him. Mark Richards has taken the flag in 5th as we follow the battle between Andy Chittenden and Tony Barwell. This is for 2nd and 3rd place amongst the Fangio runners, and it's going to be Andy Chittenden who takes 2nd place in the Fangio class, and it is Tony Barwell who is 3rd in the Fangio class and 8th overall. So the car's heading back around towards Parc Ferme. Are we going to show podium? With Rob Watkins, plenty to celebrate, and
yeah, very good drive by him, and he did a fantastic demonstration of how you need to win in these cars. It's a case of doing the absolute minimum steering input and just letting the car do the work, and really he mastered that completely, just to give the absolute minimum, get the car turning nice and early, and cover your line well, and carry all that corner speed.
Well, this is far from it for live action from Radical at Silverstone this weekend, because tomorrow we have got both races for you from the Radical European Masters. The first of them gets underway at 11 o'clock British Summer Time. We will be with you a few minutes beforehand to give you all the build-up. And then tomorrow afternoon, it's the second Radical European Masters race, and that is due to start at 14:25. So make sure that you join us for both of those as the Radical European Masters season continues in its intensity. 151 kilometres an hour average race speed for Rob Watkins. Now that is going, so that's relying on mathematical skills, don't have it, somewhere in the region of 90 to 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's it's a fantastic feeder way to get into sports car endurance. Even to endurance racing, it's a brilliant little car, really docile, and you can just see how quick and easy it is to get to grips with these cars.
Absolutely. So just wondered whether or not they missed the entrance to the pit lane. I don't think they did, as they head onward towards Parc Ferme. Here are the results then. Rob Watkins wins it from Chris Rees and Dave Morgan. Lewis G in 4th from Mark Richards and Mark Tishaw. And then it's Andy Chittenden and Tony Barwell, then Richard Wilson and Rob Ellis. Sam Moores was 11th from Richard Mayle, Paul Pearce, and unfortunately we lost Peter Tyler. Yeah, I think Rob Watkins and Chris Rees did award themselves an extra victory lap just then. So we may not be able to bring you the podium, but we should have them coming into Parc Ferme fairly quickly. And yeah, then it's a pretty short break for these drivers. They're back in action in a fortnight today at Alton Park. Very different challenge, the Radical SR1 Cup. Well, that's good to see. They didn't miss the entry to the pit lane. So there is the second place car of Chris Rees, and that was pretty hot work for Rees as Dave Morgan peels in to the pit lane as well. Opportunity just to check the tyre pressures as well on the cars, because it's a learning curve for them all as well in terms of the setup and how how that develops through the course of the year. I think the leader missed the pit lane and has gone round again. So we will have the drivers marshalled towards the podium fairly quickly. Just to confirm, for the Fangio podium, that's going to be Tony Barwell in third, Andy Chittenden in second, and Lewis G, the winner. And then the top three in the race overall were Dave Morgan in third from Chris Rees, Rob Watkins claiming victory. Plenty for the drivers to discuss and debrief. There is Lewis G just talking to his rivals. It's going to be another 3 or 4 minutes. Probably, yeah. So there is Tony Barwell. So an excellent opening weekend of Radical SR1 Cup racing for the 2015 season. Rob Watkins winning race 2, and he is currently dashing to the rostrum, and opportunity for the drivers. 3 hard rate, because certainly if you're used to watching Grand Prix racing or endurance racing, you see that the drivers out in the car for a couple of hours at a time. They make that look very easy, whereas in reality, if you're new to the world of motor racing, then to maintain the level of concentration, even for just a 20-minute race, really takes something. So here comes our race winner, Rob Watkins. I think did award himself an extra victory lap, and why not? So he will unbuckle and then be ushered up to the podium. Gets the congratulation from Chris Rees. That was a super scrap between the pair of them. Very clean, very close, very competitive, which is exactly what you would hope to see. So we'll take a look back then at the highlights in a second of the second race of the weekend from the Radical SR1 Cup. Once we've got Rob Watkins disentangled from his helmet and hands device. All smiles. Rightly so. So here is how it unfolded. And Watkins, starting from pole position, got the jump from the line and was able to lead from Rees as they accelerated on towards Copse Corner for the first time, with Dave Morgan also making a good start. They did all scrabble for grip a little bit through Copse, but thereafter it all settled down and turned into an excellent race. One of the stars of the race, as in race 1, was Mark Richards, who, after a slightly difficult start to the race, was siving through the field as disappointment for Peter Tyler, having a big spin, which unfortunately thereafter he couldn't get the car restarted. Richards fought himself up all the way through the order until he went for a move on Watkins that didn't quite work out, overcooked it and spun himself down the pack. That then released Watkins and Chris Rees to do battle. Nose to tail they ran for several laps, but despite everything that Rees could throw at Watkins, it wasn't to be. And it was victory for Rob Watkins, not quite like to flag, but he converted pole position to victory in the second Radical SR1 Cup race of the season, with runner-up being Chris Rees and Dave Morgan completing the podium ahead of Lewis G, who was the Fangio Trophy runner. So we'll get the drivers up on to the rostrum. So third place going the way of Dave Morgan. Second place for Chris Rees. And our race winner, Rob Watkins. So the drivers get up onto the podium. It's time to celebrate with the champagne, which means it's time for Will Brown and myself, Ben Evans, to say thanks very much for joining us for an excellent day of Radical SR1 Cup racing.